Let's begin the news by telling you that the federal government has inaugurated a 10-member interministerial committee to enforce the Supreme Court's recent ruling on local government autonomy. According to a statement by Segun Imohisen, Director of Information and Public Relations at the Office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, the committee will be led by Secretary to the Government of the Federation, George Akume. Key members include the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, the Attorney General of the Federation, and Minister of Justice, the Minister of Budget and Economic Planning, and the Accountant General of the Federation. The committee's primary objective is to ensure that local governments nationwide fully realize their newly granted autonomy. Joining me now to discuss this is an economist and public affairs analyst, Aliyu Ilyas. Thank you so much, Aliyu, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure.
Good afternoon, sir.
Now, Aliyu, speaking of this development, given the historic challenges in implementing local government autonomy in Nigeria, what specific strategies can the committee employ to ensure that there is effective implementation of the Supreme Court's ruling?
Right. Thank you so much. First and foremost, I think we must commend the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, for having the political will and the administrative power to actually make sure that the local governments have autonomy. I think it's a good one because you recall that President Muhammadu Buhari has actually given an executive order and does not even have any implementation or what have you in the life of local government and state. But the way President Bola Ahmed Tinubu have taken it, I think it's a good one because now, if you look at that committee headed by the Secretary to the federal government, you notice that all the financial office like Accountant General, Federal Minister of Finance, you look at all budget and planning, they factor them into it, and that simply means when they are sending those money, they will make sure that they send it directly to the appropriate local government. In addition to that, you also see that they have put the date of implementation of it, and they have also said that if you don't have substantive chairman, you will not get this allocation. I think it's a good one for Nigeria because if you look at, we have 774 local governments, and we are not seeing any developments whatsoever in that level. Perhaps you see that federal government share federal allocation, they have 52%, the state have 26%, while local government have 20%. But you see that joint account of local government and state will also still receive the two state and local government account, and that is affecting delivery at the grassroots. So it's good for the local government to have administrative power, not only giving them only political power. I think it's a good one in the right direction.
Now, with all this said, what are the potential obstacles that they may face, and how can they address these obstacles?
Well, the first obstacle there is that they may have problem with their governors because after having received the money, the governor may still call them to come and account and come and tell them how they are going to spend the money. That's the first obstacle. The second obstacle is the issue of corruption. You agree with me that in Nigeria today, once people are disposed with money, it begins to really affect them negative, that they will now start having issues of appropriation. So I think the next thing that we should look at is the local government election. The first is local government election. Let INEC or federal government have a say in that so that we can really have not only administrative independence, we can have political independence for local government. Then the second one is the issue of corruption. Once people are disposed with money, it becomes a tool in their hand to behave the way they like. So I think federal government should also have a structure that will make sure they have accountability of the money they are collecting.
Okay, what mechanisms can be put in place to prevent corruption? You talked about accountability. So how can we ensure accountability in the use of these funds and prevent corruption?
Yeah, the first thing to do is to ensure transparency. Transparency is very, very key. How do we talk about transparency? It's a three phase things. Federal government must be transparent while giving out the money. I recall during Okonjo-Iweala and Olusegun Obasanjo, they used to have a kind of a publication that will identify how much the government collects. That's number one. Number two, state also should stand as supervisor. It does not mean they don't have a say. They can also supervise and look at what is happening. Then thirdly, is that we Nigerians must hold this local government chairman accountable. we must find a way, once we see that the allocation has been given and it has been published in a newspaper, we just have to follow the money they are collecting. If this is for primary school, we should make sure that they actually carry it. And if they don't carry it, we should question them. And that's why the role of citizen is very, very key. Citizens must make sure that they follow this. And that's how our local government can be better. You agree with me that every person in Nigeria belongs to is in a particular local government. So we must make sure we follow the money and make sure that anything they say they want to do with the money, they actually do with the money.
All right. I guess my final question to you is going to be, how can the committee involve the public in the implementation process, and how can they ensure that local governments are accountable to their constituents?
Well, basically, it's quite budgetary in nature. When you want to do any carry out any expenses, must be in your budget. So what we need to do is that once they are presenting their budget, once they are having a yearly plan, once they are having monthly plan or whatever, we should make sure that they're actually doing the right thing. Because by the time you start veering the money to another project, it becomes a problem. So, like I said earlier, I think Nigeria and NGOs should start their work now to make sure they follow local government allocation very, very well. And also the states, it's to the glory of states if local government is performing well, because they will have less work to do. Then federal government must be transparent, like I mentioned earlier, in giving out that money. They should make sure that they let the stakeholder be aware of the money they are giving. So it's a good one in the right direction. We commend the federal government for this initiative. And if you look at the committee itself has actually showed transparency. You have Ministry of Finance, you have representative of the state, you have representative of the local government, you have secretary to the federal government, you have accountant general. If you look at all these people, they are going to be like a watchdog in the long run to make sure that those money they collect is actually expended to the right project.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us, economist and public affairs analyst Eliu Elias. Thank you for giving us your opinion. And of course, we're going to look to see how this is implemented. Hopefully it is. Some more stories now. The Court of Appeal in Abuja has ordered former Kogi State Governor Yahaya Bello to present himself for arraignment. The ruling, delivered on Tuesday, also restricts the former governor from taking any further legal actions regarding the charges against him until he has been formally arraigned. In a unanimous decision, Justice Ken Amadi allowed the appeal filed by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, the EFCC, challenging a previous judgment by the Kogi State High Court. Now, the lower court, presided over by Justice Issa Abdullahi Jamil, had ruled in favor of Bello in a fundamental rights case he filed in February 2024. The Court of Appeal, in its ruling, described the lower court's judgment as scandalous, agreeing with the EFCC's argument that the case was an attempt to shield Bello from his criminal trial. The appeal, presented by Senior Advocate of Nigeria Jibrin Okutekpa on behalf of the EFCC, was deemed meritorious. President Bola Tinubu has lauded Nigeria's Inspector General of Police over his efforts at combating insecurity in the country. Now, the president, who gave the remark alongside other dignitaries at a book launch to honor the achievements of the IGP, says that the book is a testament to his leadership quality and will serve as a valuable resource for future generations. President Tinubu, who was represented by the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, commended Police Chief for his dedication and visionary leadership to peace, security, and policing in Nigeria.
Dr. Tochukwu is one of those rare figures who has consistently stood tall and resolute in our nation's security architecture. His leadership has been inspirational, guiding many into the noble profession of policing through exemplary display of courage and commitment.
I must, however, acknowledge the significant impact of a particular individual on my life and career. I met President Bola Ahmed Tinubu in 1998, and that meeting produced positive transformation in my life within 24 hours. That story is also a testimony which I would like to leave for.
Meanwhile, former presidential candidate of the Labour Party in the 2023 general elections, Peter Obi, has called on the federal government to provide a full account of its dealings concerning both the old and new presidential jets. Obi's call follows recent controversies surrounding a contract between the Ogun State government and a Chinese company, which led to the seizure of 3 aircraft. Now, in response to the situation, Obi urged the federal government to disclose details such as the purchase costs, the total number of jets, and other information that has not been made public. The controversy escalated when a French court ordered the Chinese company Zhongshan Fuchang Industrial Investment and Co. Limited to seize 3 of Nigeria's presidential jets over a contract breach. The Tribunal Judiciary de Paris also prohibited Nigeria from moving or selling the jets until the Chinese firm receives the $74.5 million awarded to it. Now, examination boards in Kenya and Uganda have reached out to Nigeria's Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board, JAMB, to verify the authenticity of certificates presented by Nigerian students applying for admission to their universities. This move follows the recent discovery of fake certificates by JAMB. The information was revealed in a report titled Registrar's Report on the 2023 Admission and 2024 UTME Policy Meeting. Now, JAMB emphasized the importance of safeguarding the reputation of Nigeria's tertiary institutions on the international stage and reiterated its commitment to maintaining the integrity of student records. In light of these developments, the Nigerian federal government recently suspended the verification of degree certificates from several countries, including Uganda, Kenya, Benin Republic, and Togo, due to concerns over certificate fraud. Now, this suspension follows an investigation by Daily Nigeria journalist Umar Audu, who exposed the ease of obtaining a degree within 6 weeks in Benin Republic. The Nigeria Labour Congress has warned that it will initiate an indefinite nationwide strike if any harm befalls its president, Joe Ajaero. This announcement was made by NLC Deputy President Ado Kabiru Sani in a communique issued following a National Executive Council meeting on Tuesday. The NEC convened to address Ajaero's recent invitation by the police over allegations related to terrorism financing. The council resolved that Ajaero should comply with the police summons, but instructed the nation's workforce to remain on alert for further instructions if the situation escalates.
We agreed that we abide by the rule of law and due process. We will honor the invitation of the Nigerian police because we are not a faceless organization, but we believe that we need an extension of time after consultation with our lawyers, because this invitation was extended to the Congress President yesterday and asked to report at the police by 10 a.m. today. So we are already working with our lawyers to look for extension of time. But this does not legitimize the charges by the Nigerian police to the Congress leadership. And secondly, we resolve that in an event our Congress President was arrested or detained at any moment, we put our appellate on red alert to mobilize our membership across the country, that all workers in this country should down-tool their services. This is the resolution.
Thanks for staying with us on the news. Now, motorists in Lagos are facing severe hardships due to the ongoing fuel scarcity, with many resorting to sleeping overnight at filling stations in a desperate bid to get fuel. Although the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, the NNPCL, had said the shortages were caused by distribution challenges, it did not specify the cause of the current spike. News Central correspondent Bettina Nweli reports.
The fuel crisis has reached a critical point here in Lagos, with long queues at petrol stations becoming a common sight. Drivers are facing hours of wait time, and some stations have shut down entirely due to lack of supply. Many Lagosians are growing increasingly frustrated as they struggle to fill up their tanks while the scarcity causes disruptions in transportation affecting businesses and daily commutes.
Everything, but bí kò ṣe ń wọ́n yìí wàhálà ni kọ́ mú gbogbo ẹ̀ wálẹ̀ tó bá tẹ̀ jẹ́ kó wọ́n báyìí náà ó ti yé ká máa ríra.
It has affected me greatly and deeply. This morning I'm supposed to be in Abuja, but because trying to get fuel and the traffic, the queue in the filling station isn't allowing me to get fuel and move the time I'm supposed to move. It's really affecting me. Since last week, I'm not able to do anything. Please let our government intervene.
Without the fuel in my car, I cannot go for my daily living and my daily basis of business. So I've been here for at least 2.5 hours.
In response to the crisis, Olufemi Shoneye, Chief Corporate Communications Officer of NNPCL, posted a video of Umar Ajiya, the CFO of NNPC Limited, on his X page, attributing the supply shortages in parts of Lagos and the Federal Capital Territory FCT to distribution challenges. He also denied reports that the NNPC is indebted to international oil traders to the tune of $6.8 billion and that it has failed to remit revenues to the Federation account since January.
We've seen also information out there that the company is over-leveraged. That is far, far from true. The borrowings we have made so far by this company as outstanding at the end of 2023 are about 5 in number, 2 of which have also been fully repaid.
While the authorities continue in their efforts to alleviate the situation, citizens may have to learn to conserve fuel and limit non-essential travel as a survival strategy and, of course, to ease pressure on limited fuel supply. In Lagos, for News Central, Bettina Nwili.
Now, the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited has pledged to use 221,000 barrels of crude oil per day to service its $6.55 billion debt, as disclosed in their 2023 audited financial statement. However, the company has not specified how long this crude oil commitment will last. The NNPCL is said to be considering launching an initial public offering pending decisions by its shareholders and its board. Over the past few years, the company has shown significant growth, improving from a profit of 287 billion naira in 2020 to 3.3 trillion naira in 2023, reflecting both strategic management and operational resilience. Joining me on the news now is Tim Tochukwu, Senior Manager, Oil, Gas and Power, Anderson, Nigeria. Thank you so much, Tim Tochukwu, for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you too. Now, the NNPCL has announced plans to potentially launch an initial public offering, an IPO. What factors will influence the timing as well as the execution of the IPO?
Okay, thanks for that question. Apparently, there are a couple of factors to consider, but we may not be able to exhaust them on this session. But the key ones, I would say, things around investor sentiment and public perception. You would agree with me that public opinion would matter a lot. How the public who would buy into the shares of NNPCL perceive them, especially in terms of things around its management and even its ESG performance, things around its environmental, social, and governance structures would influence this sort of offering that they're putting out there. The roadshow and the marketing they will do would also impact that, but we also need to consider things around the political and economic stability of the country. When you look at the broader political environment in Nigeria at the moment, do we see favorable government policies towards the oil and gas sector, and particularly because largely it's the government that controls this entity at this time? Then we begin to talk about things around the transparency when it comes to financial performance and position, right? NNPCL in recent times has been publishing its financial statements. How much can the public rely on those, the corporate governance and how it's structured, the debt levels? You talked about the debt as well. These are things that investors would consider to put in their money into NNPC.
Right. And what are the implications of the NNPCL pledging 221,000 barrels of crude oil per day to offset its $6.55 billion debt. Is that not a bit of a reach? And how long is this commitment expected to last?
Well, in your report, you did mention that the period is not stated, but if we were to extrapolate, you would think that it will depend on the price of crude. So if you say that Brent crude, for instance, as of today is about $77 per barrel, it will take a bit above a year, like maybe 385 days of production and supply to pay back that, but it would also depend on the conditionalities around that forward contract, because basically that's a forward contract and the forward price will depend on the terms of the negotiation, the current price, spot price of crude, things around interest rate, because it would mean that the person who is giving that advance would also consider the time value of money in agreeing the price at which is going to take the crude is not going to be exactly the same thing as you see in the market. The carrying costs, that's the delivery cost, and the expectations of the market over the period of time also would be considered if it's going to last for a year or a year plus, right? So those are some of the things to consider, but I would expect that it will last for nothing less than a year with consistent production every day to deliver that much volume to the lender.
All right. Thank you so much for your thoughts on this. We appreciate your time with us on the news.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. To more stories now. In a surprising turn of events, beans have become the new luxury food item in Nigeria amidst rising inflation. The staple legume, once an affordable and accessible source of protein for millions, has seen its price skyrocket in recent months. The impact is being felt across the country, with food sellers struggling to make ends meet. News Central's Adebola Adeduga has been investigating this story and has more on the crisis.
Before now, beans was one of Nigeria's staple food because it was easily affordable, but not anymore. In recent times, it has gone beyond the reach of the average Nigerian. In 2023, a paint bucket of beans, which sells for 3,000 to 5,000 naira, now costs 10 to 15,000 naira. A 100 kg bag of beans, which sold last year for 50,000 naira, has increased to 250,000 naira per bag.
Mrs. Faith Ozomo, who sells bean cake, popularly known as akara, tells me how the price has varied over time and the impact on her business.
I used to fry akara. Before, I used to buy one pint of beans, 1,500. Now I used to buy 10,000 naira per pint. So now we are cutting akara now. People are complaining these are too expensive. I used to buy 2 delican of beans. Now see now my akara has finished by this time. These are too expensive. No, it's not easy for us again. Everything is too expensive.
A trader who deals in beans, Mr. Eze Friday, shares his experience.
Last year, we said the delica of beans 500 naira. We say oloyin 600 naira. The bag of it is just like 35,000 naira. White beans is 28,000 naira. The olo is not up to 8,000 naira. But now we are buying it for 240,000, 250,000 naira. The oloyin also last year is not up to 60,000 for the 100 kg. But now it's 240,000 naira for 100 kgs. The olo also 240,000 naira for 100 kgs now.
Cooked food sellers are not left out. Mrs. Yusuf Tokwe tells the story.
Gbàtà ọkọ̀ ń ta ẹ̀wà gbàtà ọkọ̀ bẹ̀rẹ̀ wà mo bẹ̀rẹ̀ wà láti 8,000 naira láti 8,000 naira ó di 15,000 láti 15,000 ó di bó ṣe ń lọ nìyẹn nísìnyí báàgì ẹ̀wà nísìnyí 250,000 báàgì ẹ̀wà kan ó àfẹ́ ti ọjà gan o tí èṣe kékeré ṣé ti ẹ̀wà tó wọ́n la fẹ́ sọ ni àbí báwo ṣe bẹ́ẹ̀ bá ń tà 300 lélẹ̀ size by size ni 400 lélẹ̀ 500 lélẹ̀ kẹ́lẹ́ bọ́wọ́ yẹ àfẹ́ ti ọjà sí ó àfẹ́ ti ọjà gan.
Clearly, removal of fuel subsidy has had a negative impact on prices of food items, and government's 100 days free import duties on some staple foods may seem not to have an effect. Government must find alternative measures to ameliorate the hardship of people. In Lagos for News Central, Adebola Adeduga.
Now, residents of Abuja, Nigeria's federal capital, have expressed divergent views on the state of food prices in the market. Some of them spoke to News Central Television, attributing the current surge in food prices to the persistent fuel scarcity at petrol stations nationwide. Joshua Imarai reports.
Despite a recent decline in Nigeria's headline inflation rate, market sellers say its effects have not been visible on prices of some food commodities. While financial experts say that food inflation makes up 50% of the inflation basket, yet sellers are concerned about the continued surge in food prices at markets.
Yam the way we dey buy 50,000, 25,000, we dey buy am 300,000 for this year. As a new yam come myself, e still worse. Our people go market yesterday, they no carry anything come.
Everything I'm selling here, no one of them will not add money inside 1 week. Beans, I'm selling it 3.2, but before it's 2.8 for brown beans. This one now is 2.7, before it's 2.5.
People where they buy crayfish, they say for before they fetch one bag of crayfish, they go use fuel like a 10 liter or 15 liter before they go make one bag of crayfish. Before they do it, the price don't go high.
Last month, you can selling tomatoes. One basket is 19,000 naira. This month, you can selling 7,000. I can selling pepper 20,000. This month, I'm going selling 10,000 naira with that. Onions, I'm going selling onions 9,000. This month, I'm going selling at 6,000, 5,000 naira. I cannot say this come market, they not even get truth. They not even pay another person. If you know one come, then go increase, then go condemn. If the old one come, then go increase where now.
Abuja residents have expressed differing opinions on the situation with the prices of foodstuff in the markets. While some say that the price of tomatoes and other food ingredients have seen a drop in prices owing to the seasonal abundance, others say the price of staple food items have continued to rise. Sellers and buyers also agree that the ongoing fuel scarcity is also a contributing factor to the rise in prices. In Abuja for News Central, I am Joshua Imarai.
Now, in an effort to support struggling families in Nigeria's northeast, Governor Babangana Zulum has overseen the distribution of food relief to 10,000 households in Mafa, Borno State. News Central's Umoru Kirawa reports that the aid provided by the federal government includes staple food products intended to help families through difficult times. Governor Zulum highlighted the critical role of these relief efforts in stabilizing local communities and reiterated the state's commitment to improving living conditions through further collaborative efforts.
These food items that are here constitute the last batch of the food items that were given to the federal government of Borno State. You can remember that some few months ago, we were at Goda local government area to distribute the first batch. The second batch was distributed in Nganze local government area of Borno State, while this is the last batch that were distributed. About 10,000 heads of household, male heads of household, are to receive the food items that are donated by the federal government, while about 15,000 female heads of household will receive support from the government of Borno State.
Many thanks for staying with us. Now, Ivory Coast health authorities have reported 28 cases of Mpox, with one person dying from the virus that has killed hundreds in Democratic Republic of Congo. The National Public Hygiene Institute said the fatal case and some others were recorded in the country's economic capital, Abidjan. Now, according to the INHP, tests were being carried out to identify the strain of the latest Mpox cases, adding that monitoring had been strengthened. Now, cases identified in the West African country this year were of the subtype that spread during a previous epidemic in 2022 known as Clade 2. A more contagious and deadly subtype known as Clade 1b has emerged in DR Congo, Burundi, Kenya, Rwanda, Uganda, and Sweden. Now, Amnesty International says Burundi's President Evariste Ndayishimiye continues to rule with an unrelenting wave of repression despite hopes of change when he took office 4 years ago. The organization claims human rights defenders, journalists, and members of the opposition are still subject to intimidation, harassment, arbitrary detention, and unfair prosecution. Ndayishimiye, who took power in June 2020 after the unexpected death of President Pierre Nkurunziza, has been lauded by the international community for slowly ending years of isolation under his predecessor's chaotic and bloody rule, although concerns about rights abuses persist. In 2015, Nkurunziza's run for a third term in office sparked protest and a failed coup, with violence leaving at least 1,200 people dead, while about 400,000 fled the country. Moving now to more stories. In Central Africa, at least 20 people, including a baby, died when an overcrowded boat sank on a river in Western Democratic Republic of Congo. According to local authorities, the incident, which happened over the weekend, involved a motorized boating vessel on the Lukenie River in the Kutu area of Mai Ndombe province. The district administrator, Jacques Nzenza, said the overloaded boat carrying about 300 people and goods sank after it hit some wood as it was heading for the town of Nioki. River and lake voyages are common in the vast Central African country where possible roads are scarce. Now, at least 25 people died in July when a boat on the Congo River sank in the eastern province of Maniema. About 100 died in 2019 in a wreck on Lake Kivu. South Africa will host an important gathering on digital identity initiatives and innovation in the region at the end of September. This groundbreaking event is set to revolutionize the digital identity landscape in the SADC region and beyond. Digital identity underpins most interactions in the digital space. In an increasingly digital world, the ability to prove who you are online has become crucial for accessing services, conducting business, and participating in society. With numerous separate digital identity initiatives currently underway in South Africa and across the African continent, the DID Uncuffed Africa serves as an ideal melting point where diverse industry stakeholders can converge on best practices and align on the way forward. To discuss this, we're now joined on the news by Chief Operating Officer at DIDX, Gideon Lumber. Thank you, Gideon, for joining us.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you join us as well. Now, Gideon, what would you say are the primary objectives of the DID UNCONF Africa event?
Yeah, thank you. So we call it DID Unconf Africa, and I think this is the origin of this event came through a incredible seminal event called the Internet Identity Workshop that has been going for the past 20 years in the States, in America. And DIDX, our company, was selected to host this kind of regional IIW event in South Africa. It's the first one in Africa, and we're super excited about it. I would say the overarching intent here is to bring together international experts and local experts in the digital identity and decentralized identity field. To hold a workshop over the course of 2 days, to unpack where we are in South Africa, in terms of digital identity development, and get local insights, international insights, and really bring a interesting, stimulating group of people together.
Right. And what impact do you foresee this event having on the regional digital economy?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. If you look at the journey of financial inclusion in Africa, in South Africa, and abroad, a lot of the barriers to entry of that are not only technology, but identity, right? So for us, one thing that we really want to unpack here is to look at how we can lower the technological barrier to entry in terms of bootstrapping the economy, in terms of financial inclusion in South Africa, in the African context specifically. How do we address the huge unbanked population in our context? And the primary point of entry there into the digital economy is always through a verifiable identity, and that's why this event is so crucial for that, is to really come up with creative solutions that solve the problems for the people in our immediate context.
Okay, I would also like for us to talk about the current challenges faced by the digital identity sector in Africa. How can Africa, or rather individuals' identity and, mitigating the risk associated with digital identity implementation, how can we achieve this?
Yeah, once again, a fantastic question. If you look at identity management in a lot of African context, we still don't have a good answer for what does a digital identity look like. I, in South Africa, still have a physical identity, either in an identity card or a book, but that is of little use in the digital economy. Right? Because once I scan that and I upload it in a digital format, it becomes very vulnerable to fraud and impersonation. If you look at one of the big pain points associated with digital identity, it's impersonation and identity theft and fraud, especially within the financial sectors. So I would say the big challenge is how do we find a digital solution for what we currently have as a physical problem, right? And how do we do that in an inclusive manner? And how do we do that through private and public sector participation? Because ultimately, we look to the private sector for innovation and speed and execution. But wherever digital identity has been successful in its implementation, it has come from a national or a public sector body.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for enlightening us on the ONCOF conference. Thank you. Now to world wrap, at least 28 Pakistani pilgrims on their way to Iraq for an Islamic religious ritual were killed when their bus crashed in central Iran, state media reported early on Wednesday. The tragic incident occurred on Tuesday night as the bus overturned and caught fire near the Deshir Taft checkpoint in Yazd province. According to state TV, 28 people have been confirmed dead, with 23 others injured. Authorities have warned that the death toll may rise as more information becomes available. Now, Chinese Premier Li Yang is welcomed by Russian Prime Minister Mikhail Mishustin in Moscow as part of a 4-day visit to Russia and Belarus. The two countries' strategic partnership has grown closer since Moscow's invasion of Ukraine, which Beijing has never condemned. Now, Li's visit comes as China and Russia ramp up economic cooperation and diplomatic contact. China presents itself as a neutral party in the war and says it is not sending lethal assistance to either side. Now to sports. After the excellent performance of Nigeria's Tigers at the 2024 Paris Olympic Games, the Nigeria Basketball Federation has released dates and venue for the 2024 Women Basketball League. According to the release, 16 teams will compete in the first and second phase, scheduled for different centers in the Savannah and Atlantic Conference League. The first phase, expected to be dunk-off on the 1st of September 2024, will see the Savannah Conference teams take to the court in Lafayette, while the teams in the Atlantic Conference will fight for honors at the Indoor Sports Hall of the Stephen Keshi Stadium, Asaba. The national finals will take place at the Indoor Sports Hall of the National Stadium, Surulere, Lagos, between October 13 to 19. MFM women basketball team is the defending champion of the league. Still in sport, Black Stars head coach Otto Addo has finalized his squad for the 2025 Africa Cup of Nations qualifiers submitted to the Ghana Football Association GFA. Ghana, a four-time AFCON champion, is in Group F with Angola, Niger and Sudan. The campaign begins with a home match against Angola at the Baba Yara Stadium on September 5, followed by an away game against Niger on the 9th of September. Now, Addo has chosen a squad of solely foreign-based players, excluding those from the Ghana Premier League, aiming for a robust and experienced team to secure early qualification. Ghana enters the qualifiers on the back of 2 World Cup qualifying wins in June, enhancing expectations as they strive for a successful AFCON campaign in Morocco next year. Now, Atletico Madrid have signed England midfielder Conor Gallagher from Chelsea for a fee believed to be in the region of £33 million. The 24-year-old has signed a 5-year contract with a Spanish top-flight club. Gallagher joined Chelsea at the age of 6 and went on to make 90 appearances, scoring 10 goals. He had entered the final year of his contract at Stamford Bridge, so Chelsea wanted to sell now to avoid losing him on a free transfer next summer. Atletico forward João Felix, also 24, is set to move in the other direction after Chelsea agreed a fee in principle for the Portugal international. The collapse of Chelsea's talks to sign Atletico striker Samuel Omorodion had delayed Gallagher's move to Spain, but the Felix deal frees up the required funds for Atletico to complete the transfer. And that's all on the news at this hour. But before we go, let's take another look at some of our major stories. Now, we told you that longer queues build up in Lagos as shortages persist. We also mentioned that 20 have been killed as overloaded wooden boat capsizes in DR Congo. And finally, we mentioned that Amnesty International says Burundi under wave of repression. Send your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number on the screen. Also follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can watch News Central live on DSTV, channel 422, StarTimes, channel 274, Avo TV, and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I'm Blessings Mosugu.